Well, it's Friday evening here in the hangar. I'm planning on getting a whole lot of building done this weekend. So you can see my previous list on the whiteboard has been erased, and now I have a very long list. This is actually all items that are required before I can start covering these wings. So the building I'm going to get done tonight is going to be at home. I'm going to work on the trailing edge strips. These pieces I've been holding off for a little while. I had one of them notched up before when I was just trying to get used to how it is that I was going to trim those without messing them up. And at the time I thought I was going to end up trimming them all individually, but I did do a good job of spacing my ribs. So as it turns out, one will fit most locations. So there's a short piece that goes on this rib 9 to 10, and then there's a piece which I will leave 1/2 inch longer on one end at the 1 to 3 gap. So I started a few days ago with 4 or 5 items up here. They're going to appear quite random in order because I just kept adding to it as time went on. Again, these are things I have to accomplish before I can cover the wings. And in just a minute, I'll describe why that's important. So the trailing edges, as I mentioned, jury struts I started in on a few days ago, have a roadblock. I've already filmed all that, so I'll just throw that on top here. Fuel tanks, I have to slosh them out. My fuel tanks are the newer style, at least, where they're supposed to be ethanol tolerant. And they're made out of the correct resin, so I have to, besides sloshing them out, I have to pressure test them. Or leak test. It's actually very super low pressure, and then put the caps on and stow them. I have the adhesive on the way that's going to bond those to the wing spars. Pitot tube. So I have a decision to make. I have the early style pitot tube, or actually I should say the basic style. Uses a triangle piece of wood, bonds outside of the or adjacent to rib number 7. And you just poke a simple hole in it, and there's a pitot tube. Has numerous advantages. One, it's super light. 2, I already own it. I don't have to get my wallet out and buy this. And then it has the tubing that goes to your airspeed indicator. Magnetometer. I do have my MGL magnetometer, which I will probably put in the opposite wing from the pitot tube. At least that's my logic right now. Those are challenging to locate. If you read the instructions, basically they can't be anywhere near an airplane. So you have to compromise. You have to find some place that's as far away from steel as possible and metal in general. So right out here in this bay 9 to 10 on the wingtip, where you can get to it through the wingtip if needed, is going to be where I'm going to put mine. So I'm not the first person to do that. Butt ribs. I've already filmed a bit on butt ribs, so I'm going to stop and show you that. Jump around here a little bit. Flapper-on brackets, of course, after the trailing edges are bonded and riveted, then I can get on to the mounting of the flapper-ons. I have to drill up and locate the flapper-on attached brackets and serialize where those go. That's a super important step, and of course, that has to take place before the wings are covered. I still have to varnish all my ribs, which is quite a bit of work. False ribs on the bottom, plus the false ribs on the top over where the lift strut attached fittings went on. And strobe position lights, I'm going to be using some brand, haven't decided exactly yet, of the lights that will mount on the tip, and they will be a combination of strobe, position, and nav lights. And that way I will be running no wires to the tail, which makes me happy. Leading edges, so I have the PVC material to put the early style, or original style rather, leading edges on this aircraft. It's the lightest version, I have no question. But I also own the Laker leading edge. Seems like a shame not to use that option. Again, I'm kind of on the fence about taking that hit. I'm leaning towards taking it because, like I said, all the cool kids are doing it. What else have I got here? Trailing edge, jury struts. Well, that seems like a short list all of a sudden, but it's not. A lot of work. So like I said, join me for episode 14. Got a recent order from Ortex. The chemicals and materials came from Germany, and they only have about a 90-day shelf life. So if there's a major disadvantage of Ortex, that's something you need to be aware of, because if your chemicals time out, you get to buy more, and they're not cheap, of course. So that's one place procrastination seems to help, except now that the clock is running.
The clock is running!
That the chemicals are at my house. So by the way, it's just the adhesive, which is, of course, the most expensive part, which has that short shelf life there. Wax and a bunch of other stuff they have don't seem to have much of a shelf life at all. So I've got a new list on my whiteboard, jury struts. So So I always allude to, I have two sets of parts for a lot of the components for this airplane. I have the original, very lightweight jury struts, and then I have these aero tube ones. That is exactly 1.5 pounds for a pair of those, and this is 3.1 pounds for a pair of these, so 1.6 pounds difference. Pound is a pound, so they add up. How many times have I said that already? And if they were a significant drag reduction and the airplane sped up 2, 3, 5 miles an hour, sure. Again, what am I going to do? Consider this basically a 100-mile-an-hour airplane, so any of these kind of drag reduction things, I don't know that we're really gaining anything. These are the metal brackets which go around the lift struts, and then the jury struts attached to those. So when I was looking in the manual today, I found an obvious problem, which is that all 4 of mine are like this, which would work for the rear spar. But then what I see in other people's build threads is that these 2 tabs are way over here, as it would seem to make sense for this location. So I need to call Heather about that. Next piece of hardware is up at the top of the jury struts, up here. The manual has you fabricate these parts right here, and that's a AN3-4A per the manual. Hopefully that's long enough. And then, so these mount, once I finally figure out where that is, to the inside of the spar, and like a lot of things, you rivet and bond those in place with Hysol. However, so the other style, which I saw in the catalog, and which I see in a lot of people's quick build kits, is a strap basically that goes through here as one rivet front and back, and has one tab that sticks down, and I like that idea already. So even though I have these, if there's some kind of back order for them, then I may still go with this method, but other than that, I got some surplus. But I do need to see if they can supply me the 2 correctly oriented sets of ears in there. By the way, I had somebody concerned last time because I went through my description of how I was grinding away the powder coat on the inside of those lift strut attach fittings, and he was concerned that he was supposed to do that because he did not. He scuffed up the tubes the way they, pretty much everything you're going to bond, and he was worried that he had missed something in the manual. So I went through the manual very carefully. At no point did it tell you to grind away the powder coating on the inside of those lift strut attach fittings. It's not the wrong thing to do. I absolutely got a great bond out of the deal. I did use the micro balloons. At no place in the manual does it say you have to grind away all the powder coating on the inside of those lift strut attach fittings, because it would be in a big bold box in the manual. I'm 100% confident if that were super important to do that. It does tell you on things like the spar doublers up there and fittings like this to not put any primer, and that this should be bare metal when you bond it on. So I apparently read that into the manual as that I should remove the powder coating entirely on the inside of those lift strut attach fittings. And again, if that was super important, they could actually mask that off, because that's one of the benefit of powder coating. So if you did not grind away all your powder coating, do not fret that your wings are going to come off, because you're probably exactly by the manual. No big deal. Other news, my engine is complete. So that's the whole reason probably the majority of you are here, is to wait for that thing to show up and start the process of getting it mounted up. So lots of work to do in the meantime. Hoping to step up my pace. Did I just say the engine's on the way? Yes. So my engine is complete. It's gone through the test, and it should have been crated as of Monday. This is Thursday, and should be on the way. So it's going to make a detour to New Mexico, to Brett Hahn's facility. He's going to check it over, and I have purchased an oil tank from him. Probably not my first choice in oil tank, but it has all the fittings where they're supposed to be. So for purposes of running the engine initially, I know it's golden, it's going to work. Apache, pretty cool. Task I never got through last night was I wanted to drill the number 30 holes that are going in these fittings, which are to help locate the butt ribs. And rather than me waving parts, I'm going to pull the airplane out. We'll go on a quick tour, and I'll show you some of the finer details of what I know about the wings as they're attached right now. I got these notches in the back ends of the rear spars so that the wings can fold. The bolts drop through, no problem. Pins fit well. I'm going to show you an issue I learned over here, and then also give you an idea what it's like to fold a wing. It is that easy. And of course you have to arrest it before it goes back. This wing doesn't quite get to perfectly straight back before this cap strip touches this rib, and there's a few solutions. I've heard of people cutting a relief notch in that. They kind of do that afterwards. Hopefully they discover that before they cover. Some people don't. The right wing, when I fold it to this exact point, actually a little bit beyond, there's a gap of about 1/8 of an inch here. So a couple days ago I came out here and was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I decided I was going to use a heat gun and pop that rib loose and move it outboard 1/8 of an inch, so it was the same as the one on the right. And heat gun in hand, I realized what a dumb idea that was, because when I heat this up and the adhesive lets go, I have also heated up the adhesive which is underneath these spar doublers. And this is a thermoset resin, which means that when you heat it up past a temperature known as the glass transition, or T sub G, this turns to rubbery goo, and at that point it's toast. So you have to scrape it all off and prep the surfaces, and that would mean I would have to drill out all the rivets, live with the fact that I was going to pop these off, keep track of them, clean everything up, redo the adhesive with the micro balloons, redo the rivets, and then relocate this rib for 1/8 of an inch. For a guy who doesn't really plan to fold the wings, I decided that was a dumb idea. So wing folding is kind of a cool feature. Pretty easy. So tonight's job is to just drill these fittings up. Won't take very long. So I cut these notches on the back end of the rear spars. They've got some work to do. This is just barely enough to clear the rear spar carry through. So what I'm going to do is take a fat Sharpie, go around here, and then the next time I have the wings off, I'm going to grind off just that amount of material, put nice radiuses on here, file these nice and smooth, and not worry about them anymore. Pull the tape off and be done. Might have missed a couple details. This is my carbon fiber boot cowl that I got. This is almost 2 pounds lighter than the fiberglass one that I sold to Eric. Little secret you guys should all know: generally the weight savings between carbon fiber and a fiberglass component is by leaving the gel coat off, because the gel coat is thick paint. Essentially it's thick resin which has the color added to it and a thixotrope, so it doesn't sag, and it has no mechanical properties that will help the part at all. So you could make a part in fiberglass that would be called skin coat. People like the look of carbon fiber, that's fine. This is going to end up painted at some point anyway. It was the weight savings I was after. So I still have a lot of fitting to do on the firewall. My sidewalls extend too far forward, so I need to pull those off, trim them. I still have to alodine those. Then I can fit this a little more closely to where it's going, and I can start work on my mock-up for my engine mount. These are my trailing edge pieces. I have them all notched and fitted. I'm going to take them home now and do their final deburr. The one for, called it gap, but it's from bay 1 through 3. This end right here, where most of the ribs, where most of the trailing edge pieces are trimmed off. This one is just left long, so that explains that one. These are actually easier to make, not harder, than the regular ones. And then for the short piece out here, this one, it comes longer than it needs to be, which is better than short. And so I had to notch it and trim it. I did that right here. So now I'm gonna pull all these off, take them home. I'm gonna hit them with a random orbit sander and alodine these. Some time ago, I got a bunch of carbon fiber arrow shafts because some people, when they're covering with some covering systems, they get this bat wing scallop in the trailing edge. Thanks to Lauren, building his Kitfox up in Alaska, he told me, skip that. I don't even need the carbon fiber tube. So while I was proud of myself for getting something light, leaving it off is even lighter. So no carbon tubes. I got some surplus parts. What else? So butt ribs. I had those little fittings. The other night I was drilling them up here. My setup on my drill press was atrocious. A couple of them are okay, a couple of them are kind of a joke, and that's where I stopped. Good news is I have extra parts, so when I ordered my butt ribs, which I did not have anywhere in my kit, those guys right there, I didn't know what my fittings were supposed to look like, so I ordered some, so that'd be one of the occasions where I ordered parts I already had. So happy day, now I get to use them. The parts I have are white. So this is between the red jury struts and white lift struts. This is starting to look like a clown car, so I gotta clean up the color scheme here somehow. Not my strong suit. But I'll get those matched somehow. Anyway, one thing I did not mention about the butt ribs is their purpose, which is to serve as a transition between the wing rib number 1 and the upper cabin structure. The butt ribs stay as part of the upper cabin, whereas the wings can be removed. They serve as the basis for mounting the windshield. And you'll see your sight gauge for your fuel tanks through there also. These are my trailing edge pieces. I have them notched, deburred, and then I went over them with a random orbit sander and the Scotch-Brite pad. So with clad aluminum parts, for proper adhesion, you do want to hit them with the Scotch-Brite. You're not actually removing the clad layer. All you're doing is breaking the shine and giving the alodine something to stick to. These tubs, I have a couple of them here. I've been using them to alodine parts. In my head, these parts fit in there, but of course in real life they don't. So I went to the airport today and grabbed this longer tub. I thought I had 2 of them, but I don't. And then I also grabbed these pieces off my center console. I'm gonna trim them and also hit these with a Scotch-Brite pad. I'm gonna mix up some chemicals and get these things converted. Okay, it's time to etch an alodine of those trailing edge pieces, and then these are the sidewall parts of my center console that I got out this morning. As I mentioned, they were too long, so I formed a flange on the end and then trimmed the flange down. I have a picture of that I'll throw in, and then like an idiot I was just touching that part with my hands, because one super important step is that you wipe the parts down with acetone, because while the etch is pretty strong, in the 4 minutes that I use as a soak time, it won't get through any globs of tape or grease or whatever. So clean the parts really well, don't touch them, and then get ready to go with the etch. And then so the steps go, you want to etch, and then you want to rinse them real quick, and then get them right into the alodine. And the instructions, which I'll go over in a second, are pretty clear that if you can't get directly from one to the other, that you need to rinse the parts off and dry them. And they're not kidding, because you'll end up with some splotchy surfaces. So again, this is for corrosion protection. I have gotten lucky sometimes and had some real nice looking parts come out with alodine, very uniform finish, and I'm gonna shoot for that today, but it's not super important. Trailing edge pieces will never be seen again, and the sidewall pieces are gonna get primed and painted. So this is the spec sheet for the alodine, and this is for the oxidizer. Interestingly enough, when you order these parts, it's the acid oxidizer, which has the hazmat fee. There is not one associated with the chromate. So if you're in an area where the shipping is prohibitive, you might be able to go to a place that sells products for boat use, because they go through the same kind of corrosion protection that we do. So it'd be under a different name, but basically it's phosphoric acid. I think, do your own research on that. Anyway, the parts I've got underlined right here is about the dilution level. And so 33 parts to 67, that's 1 to 2 basically. So it's going to be 1 part of the alodine and 2 parts water. And in this case, the 100 to 25 is a 1 to 3 ratio. And so that's what I'm about to mix up. Whenever I've done this process before, it's been 50 degrees outside and I'm in a huge hurry to keep the chemicals from cooling down. So today it's going to hit 100, so no hurry whatsoever. These chemicals actually work really good in the 90 to 100 range. Super quick side trip if you're doing spars or long pieces, even the stringers that go through the wings or on the side of the fuselage. A big piece of PVC pipe capped on both ends. That piece has outlived its usefulness, so it's going to get cut up and thrown out. Other than that, using plastic tubs like this works great. I can see I have a hose set up in the yard. It's on, ready to go. When I get the parts out of Etch, I'm going to rush them right out in the yard, rinse them off, and then I'll have to hot swap the chemicals because I only have one of these tubs which is long enough to contain the parts. And for those who are curious if the chemicals are bad enough to hurt the yard, I can assure you I would hear about it if the yard died. I have rinsed off many parts out there, not a single dead blade of grass. So now I'm going to mix up the chemicals and get to work. Alright, so the etch is mixed, alodine is mixed. What I decided to do is split it up. So the first thing I'm going to do is dump the etch in here, start the timer, and then at the end of 4 minutes I'm going to grab those parts, throw them on the grass, pour the etch into the next tub, and the timer will still be running. I will be rinsing those off with a hose, and then I look back at the timer. It's going to keep counting backwards from the moment that the 4 minutes hits, so I can just keep looking at it without touching the phone to keep track of the time. Once the parts are rinsed, I'll rinse the tub out real quick, throw the parts back in here with the Alodine, watching the timer again, and then keep going. It's going to be a bit of a crazy time here. I'm going to start my timer, set timer for 4 minutes.
Second timer for 4 minutes, starting now.
Minutes, 3 minutes. Well, in an effort to get something crossed off my ominous list up there, I'm pressing on the trailing edges. So I have them alodined, which I did all that this morning. And now I'm out here, I have them clamped in place. So you folks that bought a quick build wing are lucky that the all these trailing edge pieces are in place except for the one from ribs number 1 to 3. And so this is clamped in place today. It's not being bonded in place for the same reason that it doesn't come on a quick build wing. And that is, I thought it had something to do with rib number 1, but it doesn't. It has something to do with rib number 2 and the gas tanks. The rib number 2 couldn't go in place if the trailing edge is already here. And precursor to that is the fuel tank has to be installed. So like I said, I've got the adhesive coming for that. One of those things I can get done, probably dreaming if I think I'll get it done tonight, but at least in the next couple of days I'll get those tanks sloshed out and the threads chased and cleaned up and ready to go. So when the adhesive shows up, which I think will be Monday or Tuesday, I can get the tanks bonded in place. Then rib number 2 can go in, then the trailing edge could go on. And so how this goes is every place you can see a clamp right now, except for the very tip, is where one of the flapper-on hinge brackets goes, and that's where the joint between the trailing edge pieces goes. So the even number ribs, which this is rib number 4 and 6 and 8 and 10, will get riveted and bonded today. These odd number ribs where the flapper-on brackets go do not get rivets because those would be in the way, but they do get bonded. So with any luck, I will be drilling these up, clecoing them. This is the step shown in the manual. They have you measure 11 3/8 from the aft end of the spar to the tip. And so I just set this piece of construction debris up. You can see actually tip to tip. Required no adjustment whatsoever, so super happy about that. Got one of my favorite today. Anyway, so what I'm about to do is take a number 40 drill, 3/32 rather, and drill up all of these, one top, one bottom, each of the even numbered ribs, and I'll be prepared to bond and rivet these pieces of extrusion. Call it extrusion, that's not what it is. It's break form sheet metal. So anyway, these trailing edge pieces. And then of course, this one for number 1 and 3, it's really in place to just make sure I have continuity, that everything's gonna fit, and everything, it's looking good. So like I said, so far it's a good day, other than being 100 degrees and I'm not built for this. So ready to go with the cleat goes. I'll pull the drill out and get to work, as the saying goes.